in.
Did everybody?
Recording in progress.
Oh, here it is. There it is. That's what it was. It was preparing me. Now it prepares you to prepare you. It's coming.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It's the top of the hour, and thank you for joining us. So glad you're able to join us. We agree to disagree, and all are welcome. We're not pushing any particular agenda outside of, encouraging musicians, especially church musicians. And some of you may not get that because you don't really have a whole lot of experience with church musicians. But church musicians make a lot of sacrifices to do what they do and to make it look good. And so we don't discriminate. We are inclusive of everyone who wants to participate. And we do thank you for being here. I want to say good evening to our first panelist to join us, Brother Burgess Tolbert. How you doing, Burgess?
Good evening, everyone. Doing just great. Always blessed. Always favored.
Very good. So good. I tell you what, this week we're going to be discussing contracts and why musicians, especially church musicians, need to have contracts. Um, Most musicians, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if most musicians actually do sign contracts, but my thinking is, and this is from experience, get a contract, and if you decide not to live up to, whatever your terms are, that's fine. For example, if you sign a contract for X amount of dollars, but somebody said we can't pay you that, if you decide not to do what you do or not do what you do, it's up to you. But at least you have some protection behind you. And so I tell you what, let's go ahead and open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll get right into it. Father God, in Jesus' name, we do thank you for this day and this hour and how we feel even at this present moment. Father, you've been good to us, and for that, we want to tell you thank you. Thank you for just being good to us. We've not deserved it. We've sinned and come short of your word, but thank you for the blood that covers a multitude of sins. And so, Father God, we ask now that you would bless and show up in this discussion tonight. Father, get glory out of what we say and do in spite of what we say and do. Set a watch before these lips of clay so that we not speak anything that would hurt anyone else, but just to be a help. And Father, we thank you for everyone that will participate, whether it's live streaming or whether it's restreaming at a later time. Bless everything that their hands touch. Cause it to prosper in such a way that only you will get the glory. And if you do these things, we'll be careful to give your name the praise. If not, you'll still be God. It's in the name of Jesus, HaMashiach, that we do submit this prayer. Amen.
Man.
All right, so let me ask you a question, Burgess. I know it's going to be hard. It's hard to say what everybody does. But do most of the musicians that you know or in the circles that you travel, do they actually have signed contracts before they agree to play for a church? Or do you have any idea?
Well, back in, I say the first time I started seeing contracts in the churches was in the 90s. And it wasn't my home church. It was a church out. It was a Baptist church that believes in the contracts. It was a way of making sure that everybody agreed to the terms in writing, so there was no misunderstanding. So most times they would doing a basic meeting, church meeting, they would present the contracts to the musician so that he or she can look it over, see what any concerns they have, so they can discuss it then, and whatever adjustments, ratifications had to be done, it was done before the actual physical signing. Um, Whether you needed more money, whether you needed certain hours, certain requirements that the church may ask. And usually, what they would do, if the after you went through your, I should say before that, you didn't see no contract after you went through your interview. Your when you had to be when the first time I had to play for a church, the first thing they did was have me come and play, see if I was able to play, see if did I was able to play well, see if I knew certain hymns, certain chants, on and on. Am I comfortable? And they ask you a question: are you comfortable to play with certain types of choirs, children choirs, senior choirs? All that stuff they would ask you prior to that, and they would even ask you to come out to one of the rehearsals just to see how you blend. Then after they talk with the leadership of those particular choirs, which in particular churches I worked in was had a few choirs, and they had a favorable feel for you. Then they would bring you in for the contract and say, okay, this is what we are offering. And they did that based on making sure that you was worth the money or she was worth the money. So, and then once they found out that you was able to accomplish all that what they wanted, and usually your money depend on your not only availability but also how flexible you are and your talent. Because if you wasn't talented and you wasn't as talented as they want you to be, your money may be only $350 a month or $350 a week rather. If you had the skills, it could go up to $650 a week. Okay, I've made as much as $725 a week. Okay, because I worked again. I worked hard for what I did, and I wanted my skills to match what I was looking for, and that's the most I made. But I was also the senior musician at the time, which I didn't realize how much work that was because the senior musician had to know everything, everybody's music. If the other musicians couldn't make it, if they couldn't meet the engagements, whatever the case may be, they didn't show up. They didn't show up for that morning service. The music had to be played. I had to know the music. I didn't realize how much. Again, like I said, I didn't realize how much because that was the first time I ever been a senior musician. I've always been just a regular musician. But again, now they call them MDs. They didn't call them MDs back then, back in the '90s. So
Is
you,
MD same as minister music, or are there a difference?
well, it's a play on words.
Okay.
They give you they put minister on it to make you feel a
Right.
exceptional. You in that upper echelon. And again, only thing they do is give you an extra $50 a week and call you minister, minister of you still working. You still doing the work. And all it does is put you in a position to where you are now more accountable and responsible than the average musician. So you have to be careful of that too. Then you have to be also concerned about what happens which in the churches I've gone to, the music grew. Once they found out you can play a little bit of everything, and this was the era of the Kirk Carl, the Kirk Franklin, everybody wanted to do stomp. Everybody wanted to do the reason why we sing. And those popular songs that was moving in the audience and in the choir, they wanted to make sure that you was able to accompany when the choir wanted to sing them songs, um, and doing them well. So that means that your responsibility became more involved, and you'll find that your workload picks up, even though it was not part of your contract. You find yourself playing. If you're only playing for, let's say, two choirs, and then there's two other musicians playing for the choirs, because you have that MD behind your name, now you might as well say, I play for all the choirs. Because the MD state, even though it don't say it in the contract, it'll say other related duties.
Well, that's why it's so important to have a contract, because if you don't have a contract, what usually happens is that you sign up with the understanding you're going to do X, Y, Z. But without consulting you, you get X, Y, Z plus A, B, C, and the longer you're there, the more they're expecting you to do. Hey, brother Sam, our co-host, how you doing, bro? So
I'm
glad you
doing
could join
good.
us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you. It's a little low. Can you turn it up a little bit?
I'm sitting in my car, so I'm at the mercy of what the car allows me to do.
Okay, yeah, but we do hear you. Let me ask you a question. This question I just asked Burgess. In your circle, and I know you don't know what every musician that within your area of influence does, but do most of the musicians, or do you have any idea how many what's the percentage, say, of musicians who actually have contracts in place before they agree to play for a church?
We came up in the old school era where it was basically a handshake or a what chicken dinner, and the pastor would announce this is our new musician. So I didn't get my first independent contract until I started playing for the actual Methodist church. But there was always the handshake of well, when I was at my home church, they just kept dumping choirs. They would come up with a choir and then dump it on me, as other musicians didn't didn't make time for the older choirs. It sort of fell to me, nor did they want to deal with the children, so that fell to me. But then when they weren't there, as my brother said, I had to know everybody's music. When I matriculated to the Baptist church, I was brought in for two choirs, the male chorus and the mass choir. But then that began to grow as they wanted to add the children's choir onto me, and then start putting me in charge of the women's choir, women's day choir, men's day choir. That's when I said, this is like my home church. It's time for me to relocate once again.
Yeah, and that's my point exactly. You just illustrated it so beautifully. In fact, the both of you did that. Without a contract, it's expected that whatever new need shows up, you're expected to do it, even if it means having to take more time out of your personal time away from your family or other things you would rather be doing. You are expected. For example, here's another example where um, I know of a church, and I'm not going to say I play but I'm going to say I know of a church where one 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 at one time the pastor said, "Well, the Lord has led me to run a 40-night revival." Okay, but the musician was expected to be there all 40 nights, but there was no increase in pay. Now, again, I'm not saying, I don't want to demonize people who want to play for free. If God has led you to play for free, do it. But I'm still going to say you should have a contract in place, because in the contract negotiations, you get to know what is expected of you. Right? I played for a church once, and I went into it with the best of intentions, but it became, after a while, I could tell that it wasn't a fit, because that particular church, they didn't want what I offered in terms, and I'll explain that. As I've always seen myself as a minister of music, even if I was just hired as a musician, because to me, minister of music means that I have some amount of responsibility for growing the skills and the attitude of a particular group of people. So for me, a well-rounded music program includes contemporary gospel, traditional gospel, hymns, spirituals, an anthem every now and then, because that wasn't my strong point, but I would do it. But there are some churches, they only want top 40 gospel radio, Some churches only want the CCM type stuff. So you got to know exactly what it is that's expected of you. And the best way to do that is through contract negotiations. You also need to know how you're going to be judged, right? Are they going to judge you based on what you bring to the table? Are you growing the music department? Are you keeping up with the music department? Is the music the people like the music? Well, you need to know, if I'm going to be graded, and you are, if I'm going to be graded, what am I going to be graded on? Right? Now, here's the other rub. You can have a contract, but in some churches, especially if you are not getting is it a 1099 that makes you a independent contractor? If you're not getting that, and your earnings aren't being reported, then you could have a contract, but they are what we call at will situations. They could fire you for no reason at their own will. But at least you need to know that situation, there's a possibility that situation exists. And the way to do that is to sign a contract. Now, I feel a little disingenuous here, because I have never signed a contract before I played for a church. I just agreed to play. I showed up, and as the duties, expanded, I just accepted them. I didn't ask for more money. I don't, as long as you give me what we agreed upon, I'm good. But it every situation I could think of, it always it started including more and more duties, needing more and more of my time. Right? I wasn't doing it for the money, but there comes a point where there should be some kind of consideration. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Well, I think if you're hired by the pastor, then you're sort of a handshake. But when the actual trustee board hires you, then there's paperwork involved, which is what I appreciated from the United Methodist Church. It wasn't just the pastor hiring me. There's about 12 people, and a lot of them were musically inclined. So they made sure that I matched up to what I said that I was capable of doing. And when it came to something that I couldn't do, like some of their 1,000 hymns in their book, I said, I don't know this one, but I can learn it.
Yeah, with the Methodist Church, it's in the discipline that you sing loud. So I found the Methodist Church people to be more musically involved than say if you go to a Baptist church or Church of God in Christ. You got the choir. They're musically involved, but the audience, the congregation may not be. But in the Methodist Church, it's in the discipline that you should be singing loudly and with spirit and that type of stuff. So I'm not surprised that the music group, the people that you had to deal with in the Methodist Church were more musically inclined. But that's not the case in most other churches I have found. Now I could be wrong, and this is just the circle that I was running in. In most of the churches that I played for, the choir was a separate thing, and the choir was expected to provide the music. And very seldom did you see, people in the audience singing.
Well, again, I'm talking about doing it from the 90s, from the early 90s up until the, the early or mid 2000, 2000. The churches still then were in, every people took pride in their choir. They still had the choir robes, or whatever the choir was supposed to wear. So along with how they looked, which they took great pride in, they also wanted the sound. And usually, in the church that I was playing in was a converted theater. It had it had two tiers, two balconies. So and the first floor held over 1,000 people. I think the next floor held, I think, six or something like that. Then the next one held three. So and they based the quality of the musician on the crowd that came that Sunday. Now, one of the biggest problems they had was that nobody wanted. A lot of people didn't show up on when the choir, senior choir, sang. So my responsibility, they did not say it just like this, but they wanted me to find music that's spirited the choir, and encourage the choir to do more, get the choir to do more, and brought in the crowd. So, which means that I had to see, as a musician, part of my job was to see what the talent was all about. What talent was in the choir? Are there lead singers? Are there people that can hold down? Now, again, I had a few of the women singers who had that Shirley Caesar sound. So I knew what kind of music to get them. I had another one that had that Appetina Walker sound. I knew what type of songs to get them. There was one I had Dottie People sound. So I knew what kind of music I can bring them. And so happened they listened to that kind of music because their vocals match what they were doing. When I did that, more of the choir members showed up for the rehearsal, and the attendance on Sunday morning, whether they be visitors or regular, started to increase because they started. And then, of course, that meant that I had to grow as a musician. I had to be better at what I thought I was doing, and lock in more, so that when the people heard the songs, everybody knew the intro to An On Time God. They liked that on time intro, and a lot of, and at that particular time, your intro is what stirred the people, especially when you did the song from I told you that the one that the Pace sisters, the Staple Singers intro to, I'll Take You There, and then they changed it over to I will bless the Lord all the time. But the people still wanted to hear them intros. If you did with the younger people, they were with the teenagers and the young adults. They want to do stuff from Kurt Franklin, especially um, what's his name? That song that he did, Jesus is Real. Everybody like they know they want to hear that intro because and on their Sunday they locked into because that's what they were listening to. So people will come out just to hear the youth and support the youth in doing songs that they appreciate and like I said brought up the attendance in the seats and the pan. And that's really what it was all about. Make sure the folks that sat in the seats fill the pan. So again, even though I was not there to entertain, but I was there to encourage audience presentation because they knew the song they would sing. They would sing along with the songs along at that time. Now I don't know what they're doing. A few churches I've been to and singing the other music, I had no idea. It seemed like it's just folks just sitting there or just standing there, and they're just part of the atmosphere. They're not really involved. There is no involvement, unfortunately, from what I've seen in the other music, unless they're about to do the dance. Then everybody gets involved and swing your part and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the music, the good, solid gospel music. My responsibility as a musician to make sure that even the children's choir, I had to have songs for them that fit their age group. You know, I can't have them singing.
That's a very good point, Burgess. That's another super thing that musicians do that I don't think people really pay attention to. As a musician, minister music, or whatever your position is, you are expected to pick the songs that fit the people, not only the soloist singers, but the group itself. For example, like you just said, you might have a children's choir, or you might have a senior choir. Well, you might have a senior choir that want to do stump, but I bet you they're not going to be able to do it, right? Because it doesn't take the energy. But you, as the musician, you've got to bring a program that fits everybody, that fits what they do, and that's one thing that most musicians, it's what we do, and people expect it. Brother, boy, let me ask you a question. Turn your camera on, because I know that you have a lot of church experience, but you also have a lot of, I'll call it non-church experience. As when you do, how many people in your area or your area of influence sign contracts before they agree to play for a church?
Well, it's definitely always encouraged, but very little. I dare to say very little, because now me personally, every church that I've played for, I've had a contract, and that's been a blessing. But I know that's not everybody's story, and so my aim would be to is quite honestly, yeah, educate a lot of musicians, period, not just younger musicians, but all musicians to get that contract because when those lines get blurred, it's blurred and it doesn't feel good or anything. I would say there's a low percentage of and very few musicians that actually have a written contract that they can point to and say, yes, this is my responsibility. No, this here is not.
Yeah, when I was on the East Coast, and this just may be what happened in that particular area, but as a musician, the pastor didn't come to you. The way you knew you was fired is when you showed up, somebody else was sitting on the organ or the drums or whatever, right? In that case, I don't know if a contract would do any good because I'm of this mind. I want to be where I am celebrated, not where I'm tolerated. So if you don't want me playing at your church, I don't want to be playing at your church, right? But I still say you need to have a contract because you need to know what's expected of you and you need to know what you can expect of, the pastor, the committee, or whoever it is you ultimately report to. You need to know what's expected of you, and the only way you can do that, I think, is through contract negotiations. You need to be able to say, look, I'm going to be here as often as I can, but if the Spirit leads you to a 40-night revival, we need to talk about this. So, I could be wrong, but that's just how
Well,
I feel about it.
again, there have been times when little things like that popped up, or some special occasion that they didn't tell me about, or and like I said, and I'm saying to myself, I'm not the if it's me and two other musicians, another keyboardist, got another organist, to play at different times, and and you bring it to me, and I'm saying, and my question is, why do you always bring it first to me? Well, we know you're dependable. And I said, well, did they sign a contract saying that they're dependable too? I mean, don't look at me and say, well, I know he'll show. Well, we know we can depend on you to know the music. La, da, 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 da. I said, don't make that my curse because I'm dependable. Okay, make it your responsibility to make the other musicians that are dependable. For example, when a choir from another musician is supposed to go out, and he purposely don't show, and the choir members are glad that he don't show because they know he don't know the song. And then the pastor said, "Oh, brother Top, can you help us out here? Hold on, doc. This is this is not my day. Yeah, but the other guy." I said, "Then why haven't y'all spoken to the other guy?" But you know who the other guy is. I said, "Yeah, but you're paying him. His check don't change when he don't do, and my money don't change either when I do." And and that's where the problem comes in, that because they become too familiar with your ability to do and do it well. And I'm always going to push to do my music well. But then again, don't pay me, and don't pay me with God bless you. I'm gonna tell them point blank. None of my bills get paid that way. I've been playing a long time. Been running a long time. Not a bill got paid yet saying God bless you. So therefore, and then you need to give me proper time if you want me now to change my schedule, because there was a time when they wanted me not to. They didn't push me, but they encouraged me if I could do like my vacation time. So I between Saturday and Saturday, because they didn't want me to miss no Sundays, because the people who they had that was supposed to cover them Sundays didn't do what they wanted to do. Now I don't know, was this just they spoiled, which I think is more that, or the musician. If the musician does not lock with the audience, if the musician does not lock with the choir, you got a problem. I've heard too many things like that where the persons came through and they didn't do, but yet and still I don't hire when I go on vacation. The church does. So it's their responsibility to make sure the person you hire can do the job. Don't look at me when I get back from vacation and say, I said, how did things go? Oh, brother Tyler, don't you never take vacation again? Wait a minute. I get a vacation like everybody else. Well, this guy said, you hired him. Didn't anybody vet him? Did anybody see what he was capable to do what he did? Or the choir was just playing.
Had that in the contract, would that have changed the situation any?
No. Because if they don't do their job, see, that's where the problem comes in at. If my contract says I give vacation time from here to here, and it's not, just like at one time they tried to tell me, when the church is, if the church don't have an afternoon service, you don't have a right to go play out to another church. I said that's not in my contract. Well, we need to put that in. No, if you put that in there, I won't be signing it, because you're not going to control my days off. If I'm finished at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the close, and there's nothing going on that I need to be there, why should I sit on call for a church and the gates are locked? If I get an opportunity to go play someplace else, that's my time. They've tried to actually fight me. Well, we don't think it's right, and the Lord, no, don't put the Lord in this, because the Lord didn't tell me that I am bound to this building. I said I'll.
We lost your camera feed. I don't know
Oh,
what happened, but
yeah.
I hear you. I hear you on your point. Um, every situation that I've ever been in, if I took a vacation, I didn't get paid those Sundays. That was, you took the time off. You're not here. We got to pay somebody else, so you don't get paid. So
Yeah,
you know,
but
again,
and I was fine with that. I was fine with that. I'm not here. You don't pay me. No, I didn't get paid for. But then again, if I'm off, don't expect me to all of a sudden adjust my because it didn't work out with the other musician you brought in. But I said, but you still paid him. He walked out with a check. But you want me now to adjust my and I said I got a family. If I'm out of town, I gotta now break up the family outing to rush back to town to satisfy your desire to have a particular sound on Sunday morning. No, you got to, and they had a problem with that. They didn't like it, and I said, well, you need to start vetting the musicians better. Then they wanted me to sit in on rehearsal when they started vetting musicians in and I told them I'll sit in the back, but I'm not asking that musician nothing. That's not my job. My job is to give you my opinion. If you give them X amount of songs to play, talk to them and see how And most times, believe it or not, even if I told them the guy is not a good fit, they still brought him in. I said, fine, you made the decision. Don't ask me about nothing afterwards. When it don't work out or something happens I said I don't want to know nothing.
well,
So
so
yeah,
here's my thinking. What again? I said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. I think you should do contract negotiations, even if you are willing to waive a lot of the stipulations. At least you know what's expected of you, and they don't keep throwing things on you because I have a feeling when I say this that I'm representing most, if not many, musicians that oftentimes you start out playing for X, but after you've been a while, as a needs increase, you end up having to play for that and for this. I was so happy when I heard one of you say, I think it was you, Virgil, say you got then they want you to play for the women's day choir, then they want you to play for the men's day choir, and then the Busy Bee Club wants to have a special day and they want to have a special march, so you got to make a rehearsal for them, which I did gladly.
yeah, that was
But
that was Sam.
but it
Yeah.
was I don't think it should. I wish I could have been able to speak up for myself, and this is where I'm leading to with you guys. Why is it that I dare say most musicians work without a contract?
Because sometimes when you get that cash and you can spend it right then and there, you look forward to it for the next week.
That is so true. That is so true. I couldn't have said that better.
Yeah.
You become dependent on the money because it's a human factor that the more money you make, the more money you spend. Now you might be very disciplined and save some of it, but as your money ups, so does your lifestyle, your lifestyle. If you can afford more, if you was they was paying you only enough that after church you could go get a hamburger, okay, but then when they started paying you more and you can go buy a steak, when you go to dinner you're going to buy a steak, right?
Right.
So again, I think that's one very good reason because we become acclimated and even dependent on the money. But the contract works for your benefit, And again, I said
Well,
I'm
well,
a little
no.
disingenuous. I still feel that because I've never signed a contract, but I was never. I think I should have been able. I should have known how to speak up for myself more. Okay.
Well,
I
keep one
think
thing in mind: the contract is that your contract is not legal. If it's not notarized, it's not legal. It's just
right.
a piece of paper that people signed. You can't take it. You
I
can't take it to court.
disagree with that, Burgess. If you and
If
I
if you if you
have a
check it out,
conversation and we agree to it,
again, you're going on goodwill.
yeah,
It's
Okay,
called
you're going on
contract.
goodwill.
if I have your
Actually,
signature, that's a whole
right.
different thing. So I don't know, whether it has to be notarized. I think it should be. That's a good thing. But again,
Yeah.
with a notary, the both of you have to make sure you show up at the notary, right? But
Eh,
I'm thinking if you and I have an agreement and you sign it and I sign it and we both have copies, if some kind of
In the court of
adjudication
law,
needed to happen,
it,
I think
yeah,
that would be
in the court
good.
of law, it
But
does.
tell me if I'm wrong, because I want to understand this.
In the court of law, it does stand. If because that would become contract law, meaning uh, there's a meeting of the mind and there's an agreement uh, of services rendered. Now, if those services, for whatever reason, are not rendered or somebody backs out, then they are liable. But all of that has to be spelled out. Meaning, hey, if you miss a payment, if the church is late on a payment, what is that late fee? What is the damage that has been done? Because don't go to court talking about some, listen, I ain't get paid for 3 months. Well, hold on. I you know what I'm saying? After the first few weeks. But I think a lot of times, back to your other question, when you were speaking of why do musicians play, a lot of times they trust the pastor. A lot of times they put a lot of trust in the pastor
Yeah.
in a spiritual sense. And then when that spirituality turns into business, it gets very, very dangerous and a lot of gray area. And the one to protect yourself is to have a contract. So when you know that you're going above and beyond, as well as when they're going above and beyond. So I did have one ministry that I played for, and my son was sick in the hospital for at that time for 4 months straight, and I was working three jobs, and working those three jobs. I also was, sleeping at the hospital with my son, making sure he was taken care of. He was from a newborn all the way to 4 months, and literally, and I had to watch over the doctors because they were, forgetting to do stuff or just not doing certain things that should have been done for him, and it sent him backwards. So, nonetheless, um, the church that I was playing for at that time, they were a huge blessing to me because if I needed to miss a Sunday or miss a rehearsal or so, they didn't dock my pay or anything. If there was a snow day and there was no service, I still got paid. Um, it was a true blessing. That pastor in particular, actually, at that time I was working at Red Lobster full time, and he said, "You know what? I want you to be able to make rehearsal. So since the schedule changes every week, and then we don't know if you're gonna be able to make rehearsal or not, tell you what, go ahead and give Red Lobster uh, your 2 weeks." I said, okay. And he definitely went over and above and in the pay in regards to covering that position. And I'm entirely thankful for that. That is not everybody's scenario. Um,
I was gonna say there's an
unfortunately,
exception to the rule.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna play the race card. Actually, white pastor. This was a white pastor where I have in my past I've dealt with pastors that look like me that took more advantage of me versus actually helping me to get to where I should be. Um, as a young musician and a young man under your ministry, at least my thought. But again, I was actually, so I give big ups to that ministry. They definitely took care of me in those regards and really set me on the track. Because when I said, hey, I want to own my own business, he connected me up with another brother in the church that owned his own business. And then that brother mentored me on how to own my own business and things like that. So I say that to say this is that a contract is entirely important. It is very, very important. And it should be done, but also recognizing that no one can change the terms within that contractual time period because pastors are trying to change it up and musicians too. Musicians who want to play for 7 churches. Hey, listen, at the same time, that's fine, but that needs to be understood at the beginning. Hey, I'm playing for praise and worship and I'm out. You know what I mean? But if it's understood, then unfortunately, I heard a guy do a little podcast, and I heard short on it, and he was talking about churches need to be more consistent, meaning consistency is what people are looking for. So a lot of sporadic. Hey, by the way, we're gonna have an 8-week revival, and it just turned to 80 weeks. You know, We need to know this stuff ahead of time, planning. And this comes from the head, not even from the musician, from the head of the church, the planning committee. They need to plan ahead. They need to think about different things, and so, and then of course including musicians. I ain't gonna go on a tangent, so I'll stop there.
Well, see, again, you mentioned a very important word. So glad you could join us, Brother Perryman. Turn on
Yeah.
on your camera because I want you to join. I want to ask you a question. That planning involves the contract.
Yes.
Brother Perryman, the question where we are right now, we've gone, we as we usually do. We went to China and came back, but right now, currently, we're talking about why do so many churches, why do so many musicians actually play for churches without having negotiated a contract? You have any thoughts on that?
I don't think that there's a
Turn your mic
fast
on,
and
please.
hard. You can't hear me. I don't. I don't.
Barely.
I don't know what to do.
Okay, well,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead then.
Let- I'm turning up my volume.
Okay.
I don't know that that. I don't know that that helps. Well, to some extent, I think that for some people, the business part of it, if it feels too much like my secular job, then perhaps it's not as spiritual. It's more business like, right? Um, I also think that if a church is, and I'm kind of one for, even when it comes to choirs, I think there needs to be some governance, but rules, kind of strict rules. I kind of don't know how I feel about that, because there is a difference between a business and the church. There are some similarities, but I would think that, even in the context, and this wasn't exactly what you asked, but in the context of the choir, I'm more in favor of guidelines, kind of soft ideas, or soft something standards that we adhere to, because I'm always careful how I deal with people. And when it comes even to me, with I think my church, for example, is trying is a little too bureaucratic, and somehow our leader, in my view, uh, associates that with something of importance. You got to go through all these channels, and you got to send this memo in, and you got to be off. And the other side of it is, if you're going to treat me, if you want me to conduct this like my regular job, then I need to be paid like my regular job, and I need to have all of the benefits. And oftentimes we come short of that. So I would think that the answer, for me at least, will be somewhere in between. Not nothing, but not everything that you have on the table. Can we? And then to go back to Brother Boyd's uh, mentioning about musicians, if I'm going to just be in there for praise and worship, I don't care who you are. We'll sing without music. If you can't be there, then we can't hire you. I don't think there are any stars that need to have special privileges, uh, because I just don't. And so if Brother Boyd could play drums for us, but he could only be there late and then play praise and worship and go chasing after another dollar, then we don't need Brother Boyd. So I that's kind of
And I
perfect.
understand what you're saying, but still, for me, that's where the contract becomes very important, because if I know for a fact up front that I'm committed to be somewhere, let's say, I'm just throwing out some numbers. If I'm committed to be somewhere at 12 noon, but you need help, but you don't start till 11. If in the beginning we have negotiated and have a contract that says, look, at 12 noon I'm out because I have another commitment. I'm going to try to help you, from 11 as long as I can, but I have another commitment. Well, it seems to me that all of that is mitigated in the
Yeah,
contract. You know,
I get it. I mean, I'm not arguing the absence of a contract, but what I heard when he said that was that, and I guess he was making an example of some musicians can only give you this. I don't need that in the contract. If you can't give us what we minimally need, then we don't need you. I don't care how good you are, right? And that's what I was kind of saying. But absolutely, if your time ends at 1 o'clock and our service goes over sometimes, then we'll just have to be without because that's what the agreement is, and you're within your right. So I understand your point and agree with it.
Yeah.
I think where it comes to is like so, and I had that same mentality before. Is like, listen, man, because of the way the church flows, is the altar call is really the climax of the service. And quite honestly, a lot of surgery and things are being done, and music can be that novocaine. While that surgery is being done, and so quite honestly, I'm a firm believer in staying for a whole service. But I also want to leave room for churches who can't afford a musician, but they recognize that in the beginning, and then what they say is, "Hey, listen, this is all we can pay." And then if that's not enough, then usually the musician sometimes say, "Hey, well, I can help out, or I can do this until this time, but after that, I do need to be gone," because they may want to help you. They have the heart sometimes to help out. And they don't want to turn you down because it's really not so much about a money piece, but it's more about, hey, you know what? This ministry needs a little help. Let me help them out. I get an extra few bucks here. But my main scenario is, the other church that I pay for, because quite honestly, if musicians really treated it like a business, church goes way over time. And I'm gonna be honest, if you go overtime at an arena with Lil Wayne, you're gonna pay some money. You're gonna pay
You know,
some money.
I'm less concerned. To that point, I'm less concerned about the time that they go over than if we're talking about business. Then I'm entitled to
Right.
retirement, and those things are more important to me than paying me a time and a half,
Well,
right?
right.
And so if we wanted to compare apples and apples, but the other thing is, if I were hiring you and I know
Mhm.
that our service is from 11 until 1, if you can't be committed till about 1:30, you always got to go at 12, then I don't want to start playing that game because at
Right.
some point. Now,
Oh
I
yeah.
do understand that in everything, it's not just musicians. Everything is driven like that. The reason that we don't have more stricter uh, rules for choir members is because everybody would break the rule and then we wouldn't have nobody there on Sundays, and so we're
Right.
always kind of trying to negotiate, which then kind of, and then the other thing is, and I'll stop because there are a lot of other things, but I think that regardless, if a person is paying me whatever they're paying me, I'm going to treat it the same as if I were paid well. I know I set a bad precedent for myself at the funeral home, but it's kind of good in a sense because I'm the one that they call a lot. I get there. If the funeral starts at 12, they're expecting me to give a concert at 11:30. I started doing that, and I don't know. It's just kind of part of it. I do that at my own church. I know I ain't got
Mm-hmm.
to start until the funeral. The wake is from 10 and 11, and I don't really have to start until 11. But I get in
Mm-hmm.
there and start praise and worship, and that just kind of stuck, and people sort of now expect it, and I don't think I can bag out of it.
Right.
No, but I started that.
Well,
But I
the
mean,
that
that's just a matter of
one of the
I
issues with that, I
who
think,
knows?
too,
Sometimes
is that.
people will call
I'm
you
sorry.
because of those extras.
Right. But I will say this: I was at a church one time, and this is more so for keyboardists, more than drummers and other musicians. But they do use their fingers as well, as far as playing the instrument, and their fingers could get tired and things like that. I was at a scenario, and I did hear, I think, like the prayer team say, "Hey, can you give us some music real quick?" And it was just off the blue, off the cuff. Can you give us some music real quick for prayer? And the keyboardist actually said no. And they may have said no, not so much in a nice way. I don't know. I wasn't really a part of that conversation. But they said no. And I actually kind of understood, because at that time, the church was doing three services, and then you want them to play for prayer ahead of time. No, this is their time that they're stretching their hands and exercising and making sure, because carpal tunnel is a real thing. And if you're playing keyboard, especially like a hand hammered, weighted keyboard, that can begin to really weigh on your fingers and on your wrist, especially if you're not ergonomically sitting correctly. And so,
Why did this person say no?
because it was going to be too much stress on their finger, and you have to really kind of, I want to say, you have to. That's not something you can always just ask for on the cuff. Ask that a few days ahead of time. You knew you were going to be leading prayer. And if you knew you wanted music for prayer, you should be prepared ahead of time and say, hey, listen,
in
I
advance.
is saying, hey, can we get some soft music? And then you speak to that musician and say, hey, can you gather the band together? We want to do this for prayer. And then that's something we can prepare for. But we're doing 3 services back to back, no real breaks in between. So they have to play all the praise and worship, which was 3 to 4 songs, plus play offering maybe, and then on top of that, play behind the preacher and altar call, and then outro music. So that's a lot of weight on one person, even for a full band. And so I think sometimes we have to we have to be more strategic, because I know the person, she definitely would do it, but that day she may not have been in that place of, oh, let me, and maybe her hands were giving out or hurting or something. I don't think people take that in consideration. When people play shout music, the dude is back there sweating and working, so when they want to shout for 10 minutes, it's like, yeah, that's a blessing. But
Or more than that.
that 12 minutes, look,
boy.
they started to hurt.
Boy.
Yeah.
Did they ask the person just to pray for prayer or pray for worship and praise? Was it one person they wanted, or they wanted the whole band to play?
I think they wanted the whole band to play.
For the
They wanted to them because they were the lead of the band, and they played keys.
Okay, keep in mind what you're saying. Keep in mind, think about it real close. They wanted them to play background music for prayer. Keep that in
Right.
mind. They wanted them to play background music to do what? Usher in the presence of God in
Right.
prayer. Keep that. Listen to that again. Listen real good. Then you can go back and tell you every musician they need to repent, because if they were too busy or thought they was doing too much to help usher in the presence of God, then they don't need the gift that they're holding. Okay, keep that in mind, because He don't have to give you the. If you are ushering in the one and only, the goat of goats,
right,
and you don't have time, or you worried about carpal tunnel or whatever, and just now I can see it with a devotional service and you kind of like, but if you're asked to be a part of ushering in God's presence, and you got a problem with that, you don't need the gift.
So I'll put it this way, and I agree with some of what you said there too. Is I think more so in the lens or in the perspective. So at this particular ministry, we need to be at the church by like 7 in the morning for sound check. So we've done all sound check, done all this stuff, so a lot of things are happening, a lot of things are moving. And maybe she just had an off day, right? But I think the request coming at the last millisecond, because that's actually one of the things that we do, is we actually, at that time when I was there, what we would do is we would actually play to usher in the presence of the Lord right after the prayer team. Because what the prayer team was used to doing is they would be praying for half an hour before service. So they wanted the band to play half an hour before service, plus play the intro to service, plus play service, and then do that 3 times over. And so to ask it at the last moment, I think, was the issue, not the context of the request. Because we did do that on a regular basis.
I have a question. I have a question about that. You said it's not a matter of playing; it's a matter of when they were asked at the last moment.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking to myself as a musician, if Pastor asked me while I'm at church and I'm there, to do something that perhaps is unusual or even
Mhm.
usual. I'm just trying to figure out what's the you once you were just talking about fingers and all of that, which I kind of felt like you were building a case for them saying no, but I'm
Mhm.
just wondering what's the harm in just doing it and being done with it. Why
Certainly,
is
and
it
I
why is it a big
absolutely
issue?
right. No, and I think again, I think the issue was is the I'll be careful with saying it, but I almost want to say the inconsideration, meaning we're doing this for 3 services in a row without breaks in between. So to ask musicians to play 3 services in a row anyway, that's great. Obviously, if that's what your church is doing, that's what you're doing. But to do that 3 services in a row with no real break in between, and then you all of a sudden throw something in there like, hey, by the way, we usually play tracks or go to something on YouTube or something for prayer. Hey, by the way, we don't want to use what we've been doing previously. We want to use you. By the way, can you do this? And then surprise when the answer comes back as no, not this time.
Sounds like you're adding more to it as you go.
No, but no, but I mean that's what the
Well, I mean,
services were like though.
my bottom line is if Reverend Blair invited me to his church to play and I'm to play 3 services and I'm there, say on trial, and
Mhm.
this is how it's gonna be, then perhaps I will pack my bags. But I'm gonna do a good job and do everything he asked while I'm there. But I don't think that I want to do that in the instead of going back and forth. If that's what the job entails, and it's not, and I have left a prospective job because I didn't want all the work that
Mhm.
came, and so I didn't go there talking to the pastor about nothing because I know that he gonna say,
Right,
"Well, this is the job. By the
right,
way, I need you at 8 o'clock on Sundays, not only at 10." Well, I don't want to do that, so I found a job elsewhere. I think
right.
that'll nip it in the bud too.
Yeah, no,
This is
absolutely.
this is
You're
where
right.
the